What is your opinion of the film? I know you watched it now. What do you think about it?
I think it's great. I'm really proud of it. I think it's really fun. Like it's sort of a dark, scrappy monster movie / horror film / superhero film. It's got a lot of action. It's got heart. It's at its core, it's got a really interesting sort of identity struggle. But I just think at its essence, it's really just a fun monster movie, and I really enjoyed watching it. Like especially on a big screen, which they screened it for me in like a big movie theater, and like I really enjoyed the whole thing.
Did you read the comics for it? Is that a way, you kind of prepared for the role?
I did, yeah. I had known the Mike Mignola comics since I was like in my 20s, these Dark Horse comics. And so one of the things that they had pitched me early on was that it was going to be really dark and sort of related to the comics in that way. And so I went back to them, and it was very, important to me to get it, to sort of get his essence from that particular thing. I consider that to be the major inspiration. So I went back to the comics and I really did study them, and even things like facial expressions or body positions, things like that, I was really interested in terms of the way Mike would draw them.
So coming from Stranger Things and going to Hellboy, how was that transition? And did you take, something like the special effects in Stranger Things with you to Hellboy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different thing. So I guess the thing that I did take from me, interestingly enough, is like it's less the special effects. At its essence, Stranger Things is kind of a family drama in a weird way. Like it's about kids, it's about growing up, and in a way, Hellboy is a big old monster movie, but the family dynamics of it are one of the things that interested me the most, especially like his relationship with his father and stuff like that. So I guess that's really what I brought from Stranger Things was more the interpersonal relationships that I feel like are most important in sort of big movies. I mean, sometimes you actually want to do the opposite of what's expected, and you want to sort of focus on the things that are opposite. And so in that way, it was most interesting to focus on the personal dynamics of Hellboy and to let the special effects and the action take care of itself.
What resonated most with you about this role?
I think the fact that he's built for one thing, but he consciously wants to be something else. And that to me is a struggle that I myself feel very deeply, is that there's certain things that genetically may define me, or impulse-wise may define me, or emotion-wise may define me, but that actually who I am in the world based on my behavior and how I choose to consciously deal with the world, hopefully will define me more. And that's something that I wanted to express in this, and it was something that I think is really important for me personally, and also like sort of today to think about in terms of human beings, and I wanted to do that.
So your character has some kind of inner turmoil. Talk a little bit about that. Watching the movie, it just kind of seems like he was kind of going back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, he has a side of himself that he doesn't want to show, and that's something that I think a lot of us can relate to. We have a certain face that we show to the public, but not everyone gets to see all of us, and he spent a lot of time trying to hide it, and so he's lived with a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and those are not great things to be holding inside. So when he gets to release it all, it's pretty cathartic, it's pretty freeing, and I enjoyed that part of it.
How did you prepare for that?
There was something about this character that I could relate to, in that he's defined by his appearance. He has this massive scar on his face that it's the first thing that anyone sees when they talk to him, and their perception is tainted by it. And so, being someone of color in America, like, that's something I can relate to, and so it was an immediate way into the character, and I started my work from there.
And what do you think about the cast and the diversity that they casted?
I think it's great, and what I love about it is that it's not like, in your face. It's not, well, no, that's not true. What I like about it is that we're not hitting people over the head about diversity. The cast is diverse, and it's just understood. And Sasha brings a great element to this role, and her character, I believe, was originally a white woman. And so the fact that she's in it brings a great flavor, and the fact that Mike Mignola wrote a character like mine into his comic books is pretty forward-thinking, and I'm the lucky beneficiary of that.
How was working with the special effects? Because I know when you're acting, you don't actually see the special effects. So how did you approach that?
Thankfully, there were a lot of elements that were practical. Like, we had a lot of costumes and a lot of wardrobe and a lot of makeup, and like, we had animatronic, creatures. So we had a head start in that we didn't have to imagine as much. But, anytime that you have an effects movie, you're imagining a lot.
And coming from shows like Lost and Hawaii Five-0, what do you like most about the medium of movies and the medium of television?
Now they're blurring a lot. There's certain movies that I enjoy watching on TV, quote unquote, but epic scales, big movies about like these panoramic vistas and larger than life characters, literally, are movies to me, and they deserve to be seen in a theater.
You've always played these, hero type roles, and now you're playing a villain. How is that to switch?
It's funny because I know she's written as a villain, but I never looked at her as a villain because I felt like she has such admirable ideals, and she's the queen of the monster world. She loves her people. She feels like they're marginalized, that they are made to hide in the dark, and she wants to bring them into the light. She wants peace between humans and monsters, and I think that's a beautiful vision to have. I think the fact that she's a strong, intelligent woman that's kind of being bullied and put down by men is a very relevant kind of topic, especially today. And her character is very relevant to like who we are and the fight that women are having to have again to kind of assert their equality and assert their rights.
Reading the script, did you have any visions for the character, and what was the collaborative process with Neil?
Well, the most important thing for me with this was the British accent. Because of course I'd never done a British accent on screen before, and I knew that, no matter what I bring to the character, if the accent isn't good, it's just going to destroy it. So I worked for months and months and months, just every day with my coach, going over it and over it and over it. And I knew that like everything else would come naturally if I could get the accent correct, because just having that accent changes the way you speak, changes the tenor of your voice, changes the way you move, the way you sit. So I knew that if I could just get this accent down, the character would sort of come together naturally.
And speaking of the character, how do you relate to her? I mean, you say that she's not a villain, but she was dark. How do you relate to her?
I relate to the elements in her that are, she's a leader, she's incredibly intelligent, she's powerful, she's independent, and of course that scares all the men around her. So I felt like, yes, by the end of the movie, she's plaguing people with her magic and this and that, but, she's had her head chopped off, she's been speared in the heart. She's had her body parts in boxes for the last 5,000 years. I mean, come on, give a girl a break.
And how is it working with the special effects? Even though you don't actually, see them when you're acting, how is that?
Special effects have always been a department that I work very closely with because obviously they're such an integral part of making these kind of movies come to life. So, I'm very aware when I'm doing something like to ask them like, oh, is that okay? What is it going to look like after the fact? Maybe I can help you, especially in the scene where my body parts are all kind of scattered. It was like, oh, should I maybe have my arm a bit like this and a bit awkward? The more that you can do as an actor to help the special effects with your own self, like when I woke up, my movements were a bit erratic, and it was almost like, dancing or, modern dance in a way. So when I was walking, I just tried to be a bit jerky about it because I knew later on they would add their touches, but they would have something to work with, that there was like a good strong base of something kind of off and creepy to work with.
So how are you today?
I'm fine, Darissa. Nice to see you.
Good. So you've been quite busy between American Gods and now Hellboy. How do you balance that schedule?
Well, no, we did, but it was fine. No, I mean, the thing was, it was Hellboy we did at the end of 2017. It was last year that was the year from Hellboy. No, when I did, like, John Wick, Bold, and American Gods, and Deadwood all in the same year. But Hellboy was, no, we had 3 of the really enjoyable weeks, in Bulgaria filming. I mean, they did manage to put all my stuff together. But David is terrific, I think, as Hellboy. We have a relationship which was really good. It was sort of like based on a sort of a, stepson and father meeting for the first time when I took him for breakfast. And I think it was sort of translated into a nice sort of friendly, chippy atmosphere, which we still maintain today, which is good for the show, good for the characters,
When speaking of the relationship between you and David, you gave him a lot of advice in the film, like a father. He's a father, you're a father figure to him. Has there been someone to give you advice like that, a mentor, or what has been the best advice you've received from your father or a mentor?
No, my dad was just true to yourself. My dad was a professional footballer, and he was a really good guy. And I never had I don't think I had a real argument with him until he died, which was in 2012. But he was a good guy, and I just, I think for the first 40 years I was determined not to be a good guy. But then all things change around. You think, Jesus, my dad was a really smart guy. You only realize how smart your parents were the older you get, It's funny, isn't it?
It's true, it's true. What was your relationship with the rest of the cast?
Oh, yeah, good. Sasha and Milla, and no, they were great. They were all terrific. I didn't have anything to do. Hardly a couple of scenes with them and Derek, and I mostly worked with him, with David. And then we had a couple of the other scenes when the other characters were looking for Baba Yaga and Hellboy, but mostly with David, which was great.
And how was working with the special effects?
Very little to do. I mean, I've done a lot. I mean, the end scene was totally special effects. You've just got to actually just know what know your lines, and try not to get bored with the guy because you've got a certain light and you've got to keep your head and your thing in a certain way, and try not to get frustrated because it's got nothing to do with acting. It's got everything to do. It's what is known as keep your brain cool and your heart warm.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Where did you get that from?
I've no idea. Just suddenly came to me, Darissa.
I love it. I love it. And what was one of your favorite scenes from the movie?
I think my favorite scene is the opening scene when he comes in back from Mexico and I'm shaving him. He's having a shower and I get him out and shave him and then we have the talk. I think that's one of my favorite scenes, yeah, because that establishes who they are and establishes Hellboy and what he wants to do. Yeah, it was good.
All right. Well,
Fun
thank
to
you
do.
so much, Anne. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, darling.